Chapter 85. Honest Conversation. The fight between Voldemort and Dumbledore was over, and Dumbledore, frightened, told Harry to stay where he was. And then Harry found out that Voldemort had been lulling him into a sense of complacency all year, testing his occlumency barriers without really trying them, making Harry feel confident in his own skills, which now seemed so brittle. Harry drowned in pain. Harry was reminded that really, he had more important things to do than be in pain. He needed to ask Voldemort a question now, thanks. He didn't have time to continue his little feud with Dumbledore with whatever Voldemort's next bright plan was. Where is he, Harry thought, through their strange connection, and felt no pain. I returned him to Hogwarts. Perhaps if you ask, he will even tell you what happened. I'm done talking to you now, Harry thought gently. Harry put his glasses on and met Dumbledore's eyes. Are you all right, Harry? I think I finally got the hang of this occlumency thing, Harry informed him thoughtfully. I was trying too hard. It really is just like the Imperius, isn't it? Dumbledore pulled Harry to his feet, and then was quite busy with the Minister of Magic. Macatime, Sirius had snarled at him. Harry frowned and pulled out his communication mirror. Harry, where are you? Up here with Dumbledore. It's fine. Everything's fine. If you think, you little. Sirius means to say, interrupted Remus, that he's very happy you're okay and will be up shortly. There's been a little bit of confusion here about who exactly is being taken prisoner. I'm hoping we can talk our way out of being arrested, for once. That wasn't time, Remus, Harry heard Sirius protest and grinned. Sirius at least sounded okay. Good. Harry took the portkey and was in Dumbledore's office. He had a half an hour, did he? Well, Harry hadn't gotten tired of sprinting yet, but the door was locked. Harry was quite tense about the door being locked, until Dumbledore arrived. Well, Harry, said Dumbledore, finally turning away from the baby bird that was, you will be pleased to hear that none of your fellow students are going to suffer lasting damage from the night's events. Harry nodded jerkily. Madame Pomfrey is patching everybody up, said Dumbledore. Nymphadora Tonks may need to spend a little time in St. Mungo's, but it seems she will make a full recovery. What about Professor Snape? Did you have reason to believe he was in danger? A dream, a vision, I suppose, staged for my benefit. A heaviness seemed to enter Professor Dumbledore's eyes. I shall certainly do my best to locate him, if indeed he is in danger. Can I go try his quarters, sir, just in case? Certainly, and I shall accompany you. Having Professor Dumbledore walking next to him was very strange, in what had been very unfriendly Hogwarts halls. He was rather a magic spell to get any unfriendly Slytherin faces to turn and walk the other way. We haven't been very honest with each other this year, have we, sir? Harry asked. No, I suppose we have not, which was my mistake, Harry. It's one I make all the time. Harry made sidelong, not quite eye contact with his professor. He was getting very good at not quite eye contact. I promised Professor Snape years ago I'd tell an adult before I did anything spectacularly dangerous. Did you? How spectacularly sensible of you. I was never quite so sensible in my youth. Greg's really okay. Yes, and he apparently took the opportunity to opportune the minister about his emancipation hearing. The minister seemed quite amenable. Was Greg still absolutely covered in blood? Quite so. Sounds like Greg. He's a scary kid. If one thing saddens me about Tom more than any other, it is that he involves children in his wars. Are you really going to keep me out of it until I'm of age, Professor? I mean, I'm rather in it, it seems to me. If I can, my boy, if I can. For a moment, the headmaster looked very tired. In the spirit of honesty, perhaps you could explain why you are concerned about Professor Snape. Harry glanced around for eavesdroppers, then decided he didn't care. Voldemort was torturing him, because he said I loved him, and wouldn't I know if I loved someone, Professor? Love is a terrible and beautiful force, Harry. People are capable of the very strongest efforts and magics through love. If Tom used love to provoke you, that was his mistake, the headmaster said absently, seeming lost in thought. I think his mistake was losing his temper and coming himself when his people failed, Harry said. He would have been able to stay hidden and say it was just Mr. Malfoy's stupid plan otherwise. Yes, on that note, Harry, do you have any information that could explain Lucius Malfoy's wand turning into quite a handsome trout when he was booked for sentencing? It has everyone somewhat puzzled. Chapter 86, Dumbledore and Snape. Harry paused on the stairs, and Professor Dumbledore helpfully paused as well, waiting. No, Harry said slowly. Well, one suspicion, but it seems stupid. You have proven to have good instincts, Harry. I would be interested to hear your theory. Well, Harry started trotting down the steps again. I was distracted, but I think I remember Draco overhearing some of me telling Hermione and Ron something was up. I don't see how that connects to his father getting one of Fred and George's trick wands, though. Perhaps it would make the connection clear if you understand that Lucius is using this opportunity to claim he was there only to try to talk sense into all parties involved. Indeed, if he had been there for battle, would he not have brought a real wand? He's not going to get out of it, is he? Harry asked, horrified. He'd rather looked forward to some Death Eaters being back in prison for a while. I shall lend my considerable input towards him not getting out of it, but I fear that he will be treated leniently. The minister is quite eager for his friend to have been true if misguided. Perhaps the rest of that discussion is best left for another time. Tell me, what did Tom mean about a monograph? I know that he and I have had a connection for a while since he came back, Harry said, juggling clauses. But you didn't know that I knew that I had that connection because he and I could talk to each other. He tried to be charming. I was being stubborn and waiting for you to talk to me, which was stupid in retrospect. It was stupid at the time, too. I was just scared. I do not think less well of you for not having been able to immediately block a wizard of Voldemort's caliber from your mind, Harry, Dumbledore said gently. But I didn't really try. Professor Snape pointed me at a clumency in my second year at school, but I was curious about Voldemort. It's my besetting sin, curiosity. It is not your fault, Harry. In a low, serious voice, Dumbledore continued, nothing he does is your fault. But if I hadn't grabbed that portkey last year, he'd still be mostly dead. Harry quailed at Dumbledore's expression and said, I just think about it sometimes. Understandably. I would, however, trust your friends to remind you that you are most decidedly not Lord Voldemort. Dumbledore knocked firmly on Professor Snape's door. Enter, said a calm, familiar, beloved voice. Professor Snape was sitting in an armchair, just as if it was a normal day. His eyes were sunken, his robes in subtle disarray, but he was there. Headmaster, Snape greeted him with a nod before he turning his attention to Harry. Potter, you idiot. Quite as if it was a normal day, really. Sorry. I do not claim any talent for the second sight, Potter, but I have had a vision. In this vision, you did something so monumentally, blazingly stupid that even I, who expect very little of you, would have been shocked. Harry was so overwhelmed by the sheer Snapeoff, this comment, that he could think of nothing to say. If ever you intimate that you will do any such thing again, I will give in to my normal impulse and kill you and then myself, Snape said, quite as if discussing the weather. Are you all right, sir? That depends. Am I likely to be required to stand or fight in the next day or so? Professor Snape addressed this question to the headmaster, who had until then been observing quietly. Voldemort and his Death Eaters were confronted in the Department of Mysteries and driven back, Professor Dumbledore said gravely. The prophecy was not revealed, and our side suffered no casualties. You may rest easily, Severus. Said Harry, and drew both their attention. Eek, Hermione may have poisoned Umbridge, and I may need help making sure the antidote doesn't kill her, sir. Professor Snape burst out in rusty, cackling laughter. Are you hurt, Severus? Dumbledore asked. Snape held up a hand, his only movement since they'd come into the room. It trembled, faintly. You will need a restorative, then, Dumbledore said calmly. I shall make some directly. I'm afraid I shall be less useful from now on, Snape said, looking away from both of them, face hidden behind his hair. I assured him of my loyalty, but he is aware I am compromised in the matter of Potter. My friend, to have you back safe. I do not care if the only thing you do for the rest of your life is inform first years that they are dunderheads. Spare me, Snape said dryly. Please. Ah, Severus, you have the summer before you must again subject yourself to students. Snape agreed. You will let me know if you need anything else I can provide. I shall leave you with one happy thought to keep you company. Lucius Malfoy was tricked with a fake wand, courtesy of Weasley's Wizarding Wheezes, if I am not mistaken, and has to explain to a court why he deliberately carried a wand that turned into a trout upon the application of magic. Come along, Harry. I believe Severus wishes to be alone. Harry let Dumbledore guide him from the room with a gentle hand and glanced back worriedly over his shoulder. Professor Snape was smiling faintly. Only once the door was closed did Dumbledore say, he has never liked anyone to see that he is human. Come back up to my office, Harry. There are a few things we must still discuss in privacy. You see, Dumbledore continued, I believed it could not be long before Voldemort attempted to force his way into your mind, to manipulate and misdirect your thoughts, and I was not eager to give him more incentives to do so. I was sure that if he realized that our relationship was or had ever been closer than that of headmaster and pupil, he would seize his chance to use you as a means to spy on me. I feared the uses to which he would put you, the possibility that he might try and possess you. Harry, I believe I was right to think that Voldemort would have made use of you in such a way. On those rare occasions when we had close contact, I thought I saw a shadow of him stir behind your eyes. You were right, Harry said heavily, sinking himself into a chair. I think he used me to spy on Professor Snape because he was suspicious of him. He kept turning up to watch potions tutoring. Perhaps you should tell me a little about that. I am realizing that I have missed much in trusting Severus. Reports. His only true blind spot is himself, it seems. I don't what? He managed to convey that you hated each other and only tolerated each other's company for the sake of teaching, without saying so in so many words. Even when he agreed to take you as his apprentice, he was firm in his conviction that it was just an empty title chosen out of spite. I don't know what he thinks of me, Harry said carefully, but I think I know him pretty well, and I'm half tempted to cut off all contact with him and pretend to hate him just to keep him from being hurt again. I think, Harry, that that would hurt him very deeply. He is a hard man to know, but you must believe that. I know, Harry interrupted. He knew my mum. I guess you knew that since you taught them. I did, Dumbledore said, twinkling behind his glasses. I'm surprised he told you. He didn't. Aunt Petunia did ages ago, Harry hesitated. She made it sound sordid. I will not betray any confidences, but if I may feel free to correct something, yes, I shall feel free to correct this. Severus, feelings for Lily were not sordid in the least. Harry summoned up a small smile from somewhere and yawned. There is only one more thing we must discuss, Harry, if you will permit me to keep you from your bed a short time longer. I need to explain why you have that scar, what Voldemort was looking for in the Department of Mysteries, and why I did not tell you sooner. Chapter 87, Flashback, Flash Forward. Darby is ready to go. Would Master Draco please proofread his note the way Miss Hermione does? I have stolen your wand, because you are a bad, evil wizard. It is in the kitchen. Draco blinked twice. Your spelling is perfect, Darby. Off you go. Darby was wrong to call you a bad, evil wizard, Draco Malfoy, Darby called. and disapparated. Draco snorted. Darby hadn't been wrong at all. The Daily Prophet News clipping. Malfoy trial verdict. 1 year in Azkaban. Lucius Malfoy's statement to the court was as follows. If I had been in the service of you-know-who, surely you believe I would have brought a wand. I was visiting the ministry to talk sense into a bunch of school children I thought dangerously misguided, nothing more. I regret that my actions have been misconstrued and that I trespassed in a secure area in my concern for their well-being. I look forward to resuming my activities for the good of wizard kind after my sentence is complete. Chapter 88. Good Days. Professor Umbridge was, more or less, eventually, fine. It turned out one side effects of the paralytic sleeping poison was vivid, horrifying dreams. Professor Umbridge's had apparently involved centaurs. Harry went by Professor Snape's office and quarters, but Professor Snape had apparently gone home for the summer. Harry, who hadn't even known Professor Snape had a home outside Hogwarts, took a bit of time on a sunny Sunday sitting by the lake to try to wrap his mind around that one. Did Professor Snape have a wife or children at his not Hogwarts home? Did he have a cat? No, maybe a snake, a fish. A murderous garden like Sirius. Did he live in a city or in the countryside, the south of Wales or someplace nearby in Scotland? The mind boggled. "Hello, Harry," Draco said lightly, sitting down next to him. "A little bird told me you're not roommates with the Dark Lord any longer." "No, seems like not. Turns out people who aren't a little bit sociopaths need to occlude with emotions, not by shutting their emotions out." "Don't call me a sociopath, Harry. You've been learning occlumency." "Yes, ever since you mentioned it, in fact. You aren't the only person who can check out a library book." Draco sounded very peaceful, even pleased. "I would have thought you'd be a little cross about your father being in prison," Harry said cautiously. "Oh, I hate it, but it could be a great deal worse. His reputation really won't suffer with any of the public this way. I can't speak for his dignity, of course." "I don't really understand. Do you know how Professor Snape is?" Oh, Harry thought maybe Head'd understand. "He's a little under the weather. He went home to his house." Draco threw a stone into the lake. "Not sure I ever really pictured him having a house, to be honest," Draco said. "I saw him wearing a hat this year," Harry offered. "It was snowing out." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun shimmer on the water, and contemplated their teacher. "Draco," Harry said slowly, "with everything, when was the first time you looked into the future and knew you'd kill someone someday?" "I suppose I must have been very small. I don't really remember. I knew from the time I was too young to ride a broomstick that some people didn't understand my father and that strong men fought their enemies." "How do you wrap your mind around it, knowing you're going to have to kill someone specific?" "I've never known I had to kill someone specific, just general willingness." Harry waited patiently. "If I figure that one out," Draco said, grey eyes distant as he threw another stone into the water, hair gleaming white gold, "I'll let you know." "Draco," said an abrupt voice. Harry glanced around. Crabbe. He remembered Crabbe's father being at the Department of Mysteries with Mr. Malfoy. "Vince," Draco said lazily, "want to pull up a stone? We were just talking about our plans to murder each other's allies." Draco, Harry thought, was amazing at telling the truth. "I'd rather murder him right here." Draco stood, putting a hand on Crabbe's arm. "Witnesses, Vince, witnesses. Let's go practice instead. I'll see you soon, Potter." Crabbe grunted, but allowed Draco to lead him away. The sun set as Harry sat, watching the lake and thinking about being a murderer. Sure, he'd realized in a vague way that most of the adult wizards he looked up to were murderers or attempted murderers, but somehow he'd thought he'd be able to skip it. He didn't know if his parents had been murderers. He hoped not, somehow. Eventually, he went inside. "Dear Harry, I don't really know where to start, but Remus says I should write you a note even if I'm angry. I've gotten most of the story now from Dumbledore. The worst part about all of this is suddenly I know how adults felt about me and James throwing ourselves into reckless stunts at your age. It was funnier when I did it. That basilisk fang worked just fine to destroy the locket. Mentioned it to Dumbledore, and he said it was a good decision, and that he might call upon me to assist him with tracking down more of Voldemort's cursed items to destroy. Can't hurt to clean up after the man a little. The ministry's been very cooperative about my sentence. I guess the offer of time served is back on the table, but they want to do it properly with an actual trial this time. I didn't bring them Wormtail, but there were a pile of Death Eaters stunned in their lobby for them, and Remus was quite quick to point out the terms of the old agreement. So I'm in holding, which mostly means I'm partnering with Kingsley for the order, since he's my erstwhile jailer. Funny how things turn out. Still can't visit, what with being under arrest, but I think it's progress. Kingsley says hello. See you at home later this summer. We'll have a flaming row, and then how about hot chocolate? Chapter 89, Bad Days. The train ride home was punctuated by a nice chance to hex Malfoy and Crabbe senseless with the numbers counted, and the chance for Greg to surprise Harry again. So, Greg, Harry tried. What are you doing about the summer holidays? Going home with Luna, Greg said evenly. Need to ask her father's permission to court her, he added. Can't ask her to marry me until she's 16, Greg concluded. The entire carriage stared at him, except Luna, who continued reading contentedly. Aren't you a little young? Asked Ron with a squeak. Don't want her getting away, do I? Said Greg. Look at your sister. The pretty girls get too much attention. Did you just call my sister pretty? Ron asked flatly. Your brother just called you ugly, Greg told Ginny helpfully. Harry was beginning to wonder if disassociation from Malfoy to do his thinking for him had sped Greg's brain up somehow. He certainly had a knack for causing trouble, as Ron and Ginny descended into an amazing row. Everyone threatening Uncle Vernon for him was a really wonderful moment. It did not make things at the Dursleys any more peaceful, however. His uneasy peace with Aunt Petunia was more uneasy than ever, and Uncle Vernon had decided to firmly pretend he didn't exist. Only Dudley made any effort to be friendly, going so far as to say he'd decided not to beat Harry up anymore. Thanks, Dudley, Harry said, contemplating how he was supposed to survive however long was magically necessary to live in this house. Want to go to the park? Dudley asked. Sure. Dudley walked with Harry to the park, where they stood awkwardly. Merlin, Harry said after a minute. This is too weird. Battle tag. It's like Harry hunting, only I get a turn chasing. Dudley eyed him. You run faster than me. Then you need more practice, don't you? Harry said loftily. Slowpoke. Dudley lunged at him, and Harry fled. It wasn't quite like having a friend, but it was within the same country. Harry fell asleep that night in his bare, pale blue room with locks on the doors and all his things hidden away from his uncle, and couldn't help feeling he was in a particularly depressing hotel. The news reports were dismal. Voldemort seemed to be taking his newly revealed status as an opportunity to go on a rampage. Harry wasn't quite sure what the magical equivalent of a hurricane was, but he could tell magical assassinations when he heard locked room mystery. I'm going to the shops this afternoon, Dudders, Aunt Petunia cooed to her son. Will you be going out with your little friends? Yes, Mum, Dudley said patiently. I'm taking Harry along, toughen him up, you know. Aunt Petunia shot Harry a look of pure dislike, but only said, only if he's not bothering you, dear. He's fine, Dudley said absently. Dudley's friends were not Harry's friends, but a brisk round of negotiation had turned Harry hunting into a sort of muggle cross with Quidditch, with a few balls and permission to throw them at each other's heads. Dudley said nothing when Harry applied liquid bandages to particularly gruesome injuries, and Harry said nothing either. Plausible deniability was, after all, important, and there was something really soothing at chuckling a solid piece of wood right at Pierre's face. Dudley and Harry trailed back to their house as the sun began to head towards dinner time, tired and covered in grass stains, Harry nursing a black eye. Uncle Vernon met them at the door, Aunt Petunia at his shoulder, an evil glint in his eye. "Got a letter from your lot, boy," Uncle Vernon said, waving a piece of parchment. "Came by owl for the head of the household. Congratulated me on you getting your apprenticeship and being an adult now. All about how now you have a master my responsibilities with you are over. Over. Didn't think you'd mention it, did you? Eat me out of house and home once you'd gone and done some thing with your lot so someone else has to take responsibility for you. Well, I've had it. Being threatened, bloody owls, I'm done. Get out, boy. Out of my house, out of my life, out." "Aunt Petunia," Harry said, looking to his aunt to tell his uncle that he couldn't do this because of the wards, because Dumbledore said, to say that Vernon was frightening the neighbors. "There's been a mistake. My apprenticeship doesn't mean anything like that." "So Yowdohave won," Vernon growled. "Aha." Dudley sighed and grabbed Harry's arm. "Come on, let's go to the shops. He'll have calmed down by the time we're back." "Aunt Petunia," Harry said again. His aunt looked back at him, eyes blank. "I don't know why we didn't do this years ago," she said matter-of-factly. "It's so obvious." Harry stared. Dudley started dragging him down the street. "They're just in a strop about something," Dudley told him. "Give 'em 10 minutes and they'll forget it. It's what I always do." "They treat me a little differently than they treat you," Harry said doubtfully. But he couldn't figure out how to break Dudley's hold on his arm, so he allowed himself to be dragged. Dudley bought them a giant chocolate bar to share and offered Harry about an eighth of it. Harry laughed a little. "You're getting generous in your old age, Dudders." Harry nimbly ducked a swat of a huge hand. "Dudley," his cousin said firmly, "and I figure you saved my life a little last summer, so." Harry couldn't argue with that one, as they ambled home in the summer darkness, lit only by fireflies. By fireflies and the soaring green skull, snake trailing from its mouth, hanging like smoke above Privet Drive. Chapter 90, The Art of Disguise. Harry had a soaring moment of vertigo, and then his brain kicked into gear. This was an obvious trap, again predicated on Harry's saving people thing, but Harry hadn't something this June, and he had Dudley to keep alive. How could he keep Dudley alive? "Wand out, boy." Obeying the voice of his teacher in his mind, Harry drew his wand, grabbing Dudley's large arm with his other hand. "Dudley," Harry said softly, "we need to run now. That's a sign of a wizard terrorist group. We don't have a chance if we go that way. Come on, walk with me." "But Mum and Dad." "They're dead. You're not. You want to live." Harry couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. He was half sure he was lying. Aunt Petunia couldn't be dead. Uncle Vernon couldn't be dead. But he remembered from last summer that explanation Offmorsmord. "Ron, you know who and his followers sent the dark mark into the air whenever they killed," said Mr. Weasley. "The terror it inspired. You have no idea. You're too young. Just picture coming home and finding the dark mark hovering over your house and knowing what you're about to find inside." Mr. Weasley winced. Everyone's worst fear. The very worst. Dudley seemed frozen, so Harry gestured sharply with his wand. "Walk, Dudley." And held at one point, his cousin did turn and start walking back the way they had come. What did Harry need to do next? Huntetto shout and scream and run blindly into a fight with Voldemort and his Death Eaters. He wanted. Harry dug into one of the pockets of his hoodie and pulled out a small mirror. "Harry, can this wait?" came Sirius' voice. "The Prime Minister's about to give an address. I shouldn't really be talking. There's a dark mark over my house. I've got Dudley, but I don't see anyone else." "I think it was Remus and Tonks on your detail tonight," Sirius said. "I'm on my way." "It's a trap," Harry hissed. "Don't. They probably want to get at the Prime Minister while you're distracted, for Merlin's sake. Sirius hissed out a quiet breath. I'll contact the Order, said the voice from Harry's mirror. You just need to hold on until Remus finds you. Make sure it's him, mind. We're not the only ones with access to Polyjuice. Polyjuice, Harry realized with a jolt, was a great idea. It would be great for them to not look like Harry Potter and Dudley Dursley right now. Well, there was always invisibility choose. Now seemed like a day where you worried about temporary blindness side effects later. Dudley had started gibbering. Gotta go, Harry told his mirror, and stowed it away again to grab Dudley before Dudley could bolt into the night. Dudley raised a fist. Harry raised his wand. Dudley, Harry said, I'm going to give you something to drink to make you look like someone else. Okay, and then chocolate. I'm not drinking anything you gave me. I didn't say you had a choice. And Dudley drank the Polyjuice potion Harry hastily prepared in the shadow of a hedge, and Harry tried not to find Dudley Dursley turning into a copy of Draco Malfoy entirely weird. His posture, clothes, and expression were entirely different, miserable and hunched. That have to do. Come on, Dennis. Harry handed calming chocolate over to Dudley, who ate them absently the way he ate anything handed to him, and Harry ate an invisibility chew, what he wouldn't give for having the trace off his wand already. Why aren't we running? Dudley asked calmly. Because running draws attention, Harry muttered, and I don't know how many Death Eaters there are, SHH. They walked, slowly and calmly, past a Weasley-looking man leaning on a lamppost who reminded Harry dreadfully of his classmate Nott. The chill fog that had drifted into town over the week since Harry had been home was settling in fiercely now, and it drank the warmth from Harry's bones. They never had had dinner. They turned the next corner, back towards the center of town. Harry was trying to figure out if he should call the night bus or if that was too obvious. He could summon his firebolt, but that seemed obvious too. Harry heard someone sniff, and then two people fell into step with him and Dudley, as if stepping out of thin air. Watch her, Harry, said Tonks. She didn't look like Tonks. Never had Harry been so glad to see two hobos. Remus still looked like himself, but he honestly looked like a hobo most of the time. Okay. Not really. I thought I shouldn't go back to the house. There was a ministry pamphlet. First time a ministry pamphlet'll be good for something, Tonks said. We'll side along you out of here, then I'll come back with a team to clear the house. I'm sorry. How do I know you're really you? Last year, I helped sneak you out to fight Boggarts and Darksies with Sirius for your Easter break, and I told you it was kidnapping, said Remus. I'm afraid you're going to have to take my word for it about Tonks. Okay, what's side along? Apparition with a passenger, said Remus. That's you. What about Dudley? He's a muggle, Harry, Remus said softly. We'll be able to hide him later, but we can't take him with us. He's coming with me. Harry searched for a reason for that to be okay. He's a squib. Wizard family, right? That's legal. Remus and Tonks exchanged glances. Works for me, said Tonks. I think they'll buy it this week. Come on, boys. Each adult took the hand of one teenager, and they disappeared with a bang from Little Winging. Chapter 91. Living with Dudley. Once the calming chocolate wore off, Dudley threw the biggest tantrum Harry had ever seen. Harry, who felt like throwing a tantrum himself, locked himself in his room and refused to come out. He didn't want to deal with Dudley right now. He couldn't face Dudley right now. A knock came on his door. Harry, said Sirius, Dumbledore needs to talk to you downstairs. I can tell him to shove it if you need me to. Harry thought about anyone daring to tell Dumbledore to shove it, and unbolted his door. Sirius' expression was grave, but his eyes were alive somehow in a way Harry didn't recognize. Come on, Sirius said, and led the way downstairs. Professor Dumbledore, Dudley, and a man Harry vaguely recognized, wearing the most purple outfit Harry had ever seen, were all sitting around the kitchen table. I have just been explaining to your cousin Harry, Dumbledore said solemnly, as Harry took his seat, that if he likes, he may go away and never see you again. The name Dudley Dursley is a dangerous name to have, but we can arrange a different name, far away. He would, of course, be entirely alone, surrounded by strangers who felt no need to protect him. I want to stay with Harry, Dudley blurted. Harry felt very much like a character in a play, and eyed Dumbledore through narrowed eyes. Harry, Dudley asked, and Harry could see that Dudley was about 2 seconds from another full-blown tantrum, or perhaps crying. Of course we should stick together, Harry managed, trying to sound sturdy. We're family. I should be very happy for the summer to have you live here with me, said Sirius. I'm Harry's godfather. Harry said you were a murderer, Dudley blurted. I was cleared of all charges, Sirius said soothingly, but Harry knew Dudley a little better than that. He got away with it, Harry clarified quickly before Dudley could open his mouth. And he stole a hippogriff this one time. What's a hippogriff? It's a flying horse thing. Dudley frowned in apparent deep thought. Or there's Aunt Marge, Harry observed dryly, because he could read his part in a play when people put it in big flashing letters in front of him. And that was how Dudley Dursley moved in with Harry for the summer, sending Creature into hysterics and Sirius, Mum's portrait into an ear-splitting diatribe. Dudley, sensibly, fled upstairs. Dumbledore had to leave. There was Voldemort still out there, after all, but he promised to see Harry next week. We'll be fine here, said Sirius. After leave-taking was over, Sirius and Harry studied the screaming portrait in mutual disgust. Say, Harry said slowly, is this a load-bearing wall? No idea. What's that? Harry explained. Sirius grinned. You've had a nasty couple weeks, Sirius said lightly. You can do the honors if you like. The trace. Use mine, Sirius said, and handed over a wand of dark gnarled wood. Try Bombarda. Harry blew holes in the wall until the fact that the portrait was stuck to the wall became something of a moot issue, because the wall wasn't attached to anything important like, say, the rest of the building. Sirius grinned toothily and said, Library next. We should give the portrait and tapestry to Creature to look after, Harry commented as he headed for the stairs. Wall and all. Sirius grunted. You have to admit he's been easier to live with lately, Harry said, giving Sirius his wand back so Sirius could move the library books away from the offending tapestry-covered wall they were about to destroy. It was very therapeutic. Dudley, who seemed to think that bloodthirsty maniacs were just the people to hide behind when being hunted by bloodthirsty maniacs, bothered Sirius for war stories over dinner. Harry threw in a few stories of fighting monsters, since it seemed to calm Dudley down a little. It wasn't normal, but it wasn't bad. Sirius point-blank refused to show Harry the papers in the morning before he left for his job, which was currently posing as a Muggle bodyguard for the Prime Minister, while his minder, Kingsley, pretended to be a secretary. We'll have an order meeting just as soon as we can, and I think someone will be bringing your things over later. For now, just try to keep busy. Sirius flew from the room, and Harry eyed Dudley doubtfully. Dudley, who was being very damp, ate another bite of eggs. Harry did not know what to say. Bacon, he offered. Dudley nodded. Harry made another half-pound of bacon. Dudley ate the bacon. Harry had another cup of tea and contemplated the problem of Dudley, who liked games, but not games where you had to be clever. Dudley, who liked things like electricity. How did adults deal with difficult conversations, anyway? Merlin. I think Sirius keeps fire whiskey around here somewhere, Harry said. Ever been drunk? Seems like a good day to have a try, don't you think? Which is how Harry and Dudley ended up locking themselves in a quarter-demolished library, seeing what drinking fire whiskey was like. Harry was honestly not that impressed, but he could hear people coming and going downstairs, and the idea of talking to members of the Order and them offering him comfort was just. He just wasn't doing it. I didn't want them to be murdered, Harry said aloud as he thought it. Yeah, you did, Dudley muttered. You made the magic protection stop. It's your fault. I didn't kill them. I didn't kill them. I didn't want them to die. They weren't your parents, were they? They were mine. They were mine. They were the only aunt and uncle I had. It's not as if you lost your parents. Harry took a breath and let it out. It's exactly like I lost my parents, Dudley, he said tiredly. It was probably the same man, back for round 2. He probably sent that letter to Uncle Vernon to trick him into kicking me out. It'd be like him. Are we going to die? You're not, Harry said more firmly. You're going to live and have horrible fat children who bully all the other kids and make drills or something. I might die, I don't know. I'm not making drills, Dudley muttered. Dunno what I'll do, not drills. If we pretend you're a squib, you could live in the wizarding world. Why would a wanto? You all use fire for everything. It's stupid. We use magic for everything. It's great. Except for all the terrorists, you mean? Yeah, except for all the terrorists. So why you? What you do to him, this terrorist? Dunno. He keeps trying to kill me and I keep not dying, I suppose. Has to be bad for the ego. I'm just a kid and everything. Dudley contemplated him through lidded eyes. Yeah, I can see why someone want to kill you, actually. You're, dunno the word. Annoying. Not that one. Slippery. Well, yeah, but that's not it either. I don't know, Dudley. Let me know if you figure it out. That right there. You can't beat me in a fight, so you're always saying things. I can beat you in a fight now, Harry pointed out, wondering if more whiskey would help this conversation. He patted a broken piece of wall affectionately. You mean I'm sarcastic? I guess. Harry sighed. Tell me about all these adults, Dudley said. I don't know one from another, except the old guy runs your school. Harry winced at referring to Dumbledore as the old guy and tried to explain to Dudley who everyone was, without adding anything secret, personal, or none of Dudley's business. It was hard to talk about Remus without talking about werewolves, Dumbledore without talking about the Order. Still, it passed the time. Chapter 92, Custody Issues. Sirius protecting the Prime Minister was rather good, besides being pretty cool. It meant that Sirius wasn't around much, which suited Harry. Harry was feeling far too many things to be able to deal with a witness. It also meant he and Sirius hadn't gotten around to that row they'd been planning to have, but Harry figured they'd planned to have that in July anyway. It'd keep, he hoped. Not that being alone at number 12, with Dudley and Creature while trying to deal with a whole lot of guilt, was exactly easy. Harry found himself shouting at Creature quite without meaning to. After Creature started treating Dudley like a stray dog they'd adopted that liked to steal food. Admittedly, Dudley did steal food a lot, but that didn't mean Creature should use that tone with him when his parents had just been murdered. Luckily, for Harry's sanity, someone else had felt free to explain Voldemort to Dudley, so Harry didn't have to stumble through why this had happened. Nutter, who kills a lot of people, did cover it, especially once the bridge attack happened. At least Tonks brought Harry's things from home. The interesting thing about breaking both part of the front hallway and part of the library wall was that suddenly conversations in the kitchen were a lot less soundproof if you put your head in the hole in the library wall and held very still. So far, Harry hadn't been caught doing it. He was feeling pretty good about that. Harry should be here, Sirius was saying. It's his life. He doesn't need the worry, said another male voice. Something, something. If you think you can win a ministry hearing for custody, you have another thing coming, Black. That was Professor Snape. Harry was suddenly glad he wasn't in the meeting, even if it was about him. He didn't want to face someone else he had to feel guilty about today. Difference between legal custody and who is to care for him. That was Dumbledore. Arthur and I, Mrs. Weasley. Harry decided this discussion was too depressing and pulled his head out of the hole in the library wall. He turned and stared right into Creature's face. This was not a face anyone wanted to be surprised by, to put it mildly. Creature could have been serving Miss Bella, but no. Creature has to serve the master, and the master has his pets and his horrible boy. What is the horrible boy doing? Creature wonders. Is he going to destroy more of the house? No, I'm not going to destroy more of the house. Anyway, we put the painting and tapestry away for whoever. Harry paused, diverted. What happens if Sirius doesn't get married? Creature moaned at him. What happens if Sirius does get married? Harry muttered. I can't see Sirius staying home. Do wizards take jobs as babysitters? Creature would teach the child all the history of the House of Black, Creature said, an odd light in his eyes. A rebirth, with a proper woman. You want me to research genealogies for you, don't you? Creature does not need the horrible boy to do his research for him. There've been a lot of deaths in the last war, Harry said, enjoying the distraction. And you want to be picky, right? Someone who could hold serious interest but had the right, pedigree. The horrible boy will help Creature. And then Creature will stop calling Dudley my pet. No, but Creature will repair the wall. Yeah, all right. Which is how Harry ended up researching pureblood genealogies for the next few hours, while downstairs people debated his life. Sirius came in to find Harry sitting cross-legged on the floor, Creature staring at him from a foot away. We've gotten it narrowed down to about 20 girls, Harry said happily. Except these books haven't been updated in the past decade, so they might be dead or married. You don't mind if I pick who you marry, right? Since you're all picking who I live with. Sirius snorted. Stop getting Creature's hopes up and come downstairs. I think you can appear without starting any duels now. Do you promise? Absolutely not. Molly Weasley's going to come at me with a knife. Better be ready to duck, then. You think she'd go for the face? I was thinking the gut myself. Honestly, she seems more like a frying pan lady, if we're leaving wands out of the picture. Wands and frying pan. Enchant the frying pan to hit me in the head, guessed Sirius. Harry took his seat at the kitchen table. Still there were Molly Weasley, Sirius, and the man in purple, Diggle. Before we say anything, Sirius said, the light of mischief of his eye, Harry, why don't you tell us what you'd like to have happen with your guardianship? You're my guardian, Harry said promptly. I think Dudley and I are going to last about another week before we start breaking furniture. Daedalus Diggle coughed something that sounded surprisingly like walls. Harry hadn't been aware the man had a sense of humor. No one wants you two trapped here all summer, said Sirius, especially with me away all the time with the Prime Minister. So while this will be your home of record, if the Ministry asks, Marley's inviting you to stay with Ron as usual. And Dudley. If he agrees, says Mr. Diggle, we'll create an identity for him. Daedalus Diggle the second sounds promising, doesn't it? I live in a muggle town. He'll have some time to settle in before the school year begins, and you can see him again next summer as usual. Harry, who hadn't been expecting that, took a moment to sit and think about it. Will that work? Dumbledore says it will, said Sirius. He said it'd work before, too, Harry muttered. Harry, dear, said Mrs. Weasley, there's something you should see. She handed over a folded sheet of parchment, covered in emerald ink, that Harry had last seen held in Vernon Dursley's large fist. The lettering was elegant, angled, somehow old-fashioned, and the letter read like ministry boilerplate. At least until Harry got to the signature, large, jagged, and emerald. Yours most sincerely. T.M. Riddle. Most people wouldn't know what that meant, but Harry wasn't most people. Harry went back to the head of the letter and began again. Head of household, you and your wife are to be congratulated. Your efforts in his upbringing have been noted. Oh, said Harry, and then he didn't say anything else for a while. He wondered if Voldemort had laughed, this time when he did it. It was around this time when the temporary blindness kicked in. Harry, who had been hoping he'd managed a batch without this side effect, blinked a few times. "Harry," asked Sirius, "gone a bit blind. Don't worry, it'll wear off." "Have you been experimenting again?" Mrs. Weasley started rather severely. "I thought it might be good to be invisible, what with Voldemort attacking my house." Harry was yelling. He'd never yelled at Mrs. Weasley before. He dragged a hand down his face and tried to think about Quidditch. "You did good, kid," said Sirius. "I didn't even Trito save them," Harry muttered, looking down. Not being able to see was awful. "But you saved you, and that's who I care about. I could care less about them." "Sirius," interjected Mrs. Weasley. "It's true, isn't it?" asked Sirius. "They were both nasty pieces of work. I've been tempted to curse them myself, and not just once either." "You can't say that." "Sirius is right," Harry said. "I know you want to think the best of people, Mrs. Weasley, and I didn't want them to be murdered, but they were." He shrugged. "Perhaps we should resume this meeting when Mr. Potter can see again," asked Mr. Diggle. And that seemed to be that, for a while, thankfully. Chapter 93. Dudley realizes there are advantages. By the time Harry was done being blind, Daedalus Diggle had talked to Dudley for a few hours. Mrs. Weasley had given Harry a huge hug and a stack of meat pies, and Sirius had gone back to work. Harry spent the time chatting idly with Creature about whether Sirius was more likely to be interested in a pureblood girl his own age or someone closer to Harry's age, which devolved into a really disturbing segue into why Sirius, womanizing great-grandfather, had been a great man. Harry had begun to see vague shapes by the time Dudley came to sit by him in the library. "You never said you were famous." "Well, would have been a bit awkward, wouldn't it? Suppose. What did you and Mr. Diggle talk about?" "The town he lives in. It's tiny, no other wizards he knows of, and it'll be dead boring, but at least he has a telly." Harry laughed softly. "Think you'll go?" "Do you think I should?" "I think we should stick together," Harry said thoughtfully. "But standing right next to me probably isn't the safest place to be. We can be family and not live right in each other's pockets all the time. You think you'll be able to talk him into getting you a PlayStation?" "Seems like a soft touch," Dudley said, completely without shame. "Bet I can talk him round to whatever I want. Poor old orphan me needs to be taken care of." It was a good thing, Harry reflected, that Dudley had always had the emotional depth of a mud puddle. "You can stay here, if you want." "Everyone's been really clear about that," Dudley said, with some puzzlement. Harry decided not to elaborate on magic tied into Dudley's blood, on the theory that it would make Dudley scared of his own veins. Best not. "Did he say when you'd move?" "Next week," Dudley said, giving up on the pretense that he was asking Harry's opinion one bit. "It gives him time to make paperwork somehow. He says his friend knows all the muggle criminals who do that sort of thing." Harry squinted at Dudley's grey, blobby form. "Tell me you didn't say you'd like to meet Mundungus Fletcher. He sounds like the sort of bloke to know. Half the people who come through here are police, Dudley. Not nicking anything important here, am I?" Harry had a brief hysterical mental image of Dudley Dursley, cat burglar, breaking into museums on a thin line in a black form-fitting suit. He really did have to invent candy to erase memories. "Harry," Dudley said thoughtfully. There was a blur of motion, and suddenly the grey, blurry world was even blurrier. "Got your glasses?" Dudley sing-songed. "Poor little orphan, huh? Have fun," and Dudley bolted to the other side of the room. The ensuing chase scene was embarrassing, mostly for Harry. He was so glad a responsible adult had realized that locking him and Dudley in a house together for 3 months was less a recipe for brotherly bonding and more a recipe for this. The thing about being almost friends, sort of, with Dudley, if only because the other option was being almost enemies, was that Harry was reminded that his cousin was basically a better person than Draco Malfoy, who Harry secretly rather liked in between wanting to punch him. Dudley didn't want to kill off any large groups of people, or keep intelligent being as overlooked, slaves if you listen to Hermione, which everyone should. It would be a better world if everyone listened to Hermione. He was just selfish, lazy, and casually cruel, with an eye for petty crime that made Harry vow to keep him away from Mundungus Fletcher if it was the last thing he did. Harry would see him at Christmas. Harry was not entirely sure whose bright idea that was, and since being in the same room with Dudley left Harry with the overwhelming urge to apologize for getting Dudley's parents killed, and also the overwhelming urge to yell at Dudley for being sad, Harry was fine with that. Really fine. Harry was fine in general. If he spent some time hiding in his wardrobe, trying to figure out why he was crying over Aunt Petunia of all people, well, that was no one's business but his own. Chapter 94, Roman 6, Hedwig is a great owl. Harry did a little mental math when he found out that Dumbledore was taking him to the Weasleys. Did that mean one Dumbledore equaled 6 fully trained auras? It did sound about right, but it made Harry wonder where he could learn to be that fierce. Potions was wonderful, but it was mostly a support profession. Good if you prepared for the right thing or to clean up after a disaster. But in the split-second decision-making of combat, he'd noticed there just wasn't time to be finding and drinking the right potion or eating the right candy. At least he hadn't slacked off on learning defense to work on his potions grade. "I have played my part well," said Snape, "and you overlook Dumbledore's greatest weakness. He has to believe the best of people. I spun him a tale of deepest remorse when I joined his staff, fresh from my Death Eater days, and he embraced me with open arms though, as I say, never allowing me nearer the dark arts than he could help. Dumbledore has been a great wizardo, yes, he has, for Bellatrix had made a scathing noise. The Dark Lord acknowledges it. I am pleased to say, however, that Dumbledore is growing old. The duel with the Dark Lord last month shook him. He has since sustained a serious injury because his reactions are slower than they once were. But through all these years, he has never stopped trusting Severus Snape, and therein lies my great value to the Dark Lord." Snape took another sip of wine and wondered if he'd have to kill a woman he rather liked tonight. "But surely nothing can explain why you would take Harry Potter as an apprentice," Bellatrix said triumphantly. "It is certainly not my intention to explain it. In truth, I do not understand it myself." He smiled, allowing himself the pleasure of confounding someone. But when the Dark Lord makes a suggestion, one listens. "The Dark Lord told you to make Potter your apprentice. Perhaps you will have better luck requesting an explanation than I had," he said dryly. "I have my suspicions, but I do not make a habit of speculating on his motives." Bellatrix still looked unhappy, though she appeared unsure how best to attack Snape next. Taking advantage of her silence, Snape turned to her sister. "It turned out that having your chosen one's aunt and uncle murdered was bad for morale. So the deaths of Vernon and Petunia Dursley of number 4, Privet Drive, were attributed to a gas leak." Wizards, who seldom read the Muggle papers, continued on in the blithe assumption that the chosen one was off training in a cheerful but action-filled montage. Harry Potter had pus in his hair. This marked the 3rd time today he had gotten an exploding potion in the face, though it was the first time it had been of the consistency of slime. The last 2 had just stunk. Researching murderers was so much less messy than researching potions, at least when you weren't in the same room with the murderers. "Creature," Harry called, "do me a favor and get me a clean cloth, would you?" Creature handed him a clean cloth with a glare that could have stripped paint. Since Harry was a lot more worried about accidentally stripping his own skin off, Harry blithely ignored this. "I'm going away today, Creature," Harry said, taking off his glasses and trying to remove the most obvious goo from his face and hair. "You'll have to take care of Sirius for me." Creature could have belonged to Miss Bellatrix, but no, Creature must deal with the Master, who is a disgrace. You know he's more likely to act disgraceful just to be contrary, don't you? I always used to do that. He's quite proper when he's not thinking about it. Creature did not have an immediate retort to this. Harry Futile attempted to clean his glasses on the already sodden green hand towel. Right, Harry said. A bath, I think. Creature will draw it, Creature said abruptly, and disappeared with a pop. Harry continued unsure if Creature wanted to kill him or wanted Harry to stay forever. But Harry was pretty used to a bit of existential uncertainty in his life at this point. Number 12, Grimmauld Place, might not have a pervading aura of evil anymore, or weird things scuttling in the corners, but it could never be a muggle home with Creature wandering around in a tea towel muttering. Harry had a secret plan to get Creature a new tea towel for Christmas with reindeer on it. It wouldn't suit Creature at all, but Harry was hoping Creature shared Darby's complete lack of sense of what clothes should look like. If Harry hurried, he should be clean and presentable by the time Dumbledore got here to take him on that errand. Harry had to fight the strongest urge to steal Horace Slughorn's dragon's blood during their conversation. It was not that he made a habit of being a thief. Indeed, he'd gone quite off it. But some of the most interesting potions needed it as an ingredient, and he was quite limited by his wish not to drain his savings to practice making terrible excuses for potions. Harry had to talk to Professor Dumbledore about the Dursleys. Professor Dumbledore had to apologize, for one thing, but he successfully avoided discussing them with Ron and Hermione. All his previous experience avoiding talking about the Dursleys came in handy, really. With a paranoid glance at his trunk, Harry decided to avoid unpacking. This whole thing about home and family was enough to give a kid a complex, honestly. Fleur de Lacre was a surprise. Telling his friends about the prophecy wasn't a surprise. Really, Harry knew they'd be all right with it. It was mostly a good distraction from any impulse anyone might have had to sympathize with him. And then there were owls, bearing owl results. Dear Professor Snape, I know you do not like to be bothered during the summer holidays, but I thought I would. Harry crumpled up the note and started over. Dear Professor Snape, I achieved an outstanding on my potions owl, as instructed. I hope your summer is. Harry tore that one in half. Hedwig, sitting on her perch, hooted at him. I'm working on a letter for Professor Snape, Hedwig. I'll have it for you in a minute. Dear Professor Snape, how are you? I am fine. I hope you are recovered. I was pleased to receive my owl results and look forward to seeing you at Hogwarts. Harry studied that one, then crumpled it up too. Hedwig, bored, soared out the window. Dear Evil Nose, I got an outstanding on my potions owl, so you're stuck with me. Everyone has been asking me how I am, and I look forward to returning to school so you can tell me I'm being an idiot. I've been trying to figure out what to put in a letter to you for an hour, and this is sadly my best attempt, which I am now going to ritually burn. My last myrtle potion demonstrated that if you're over-enthusiastic about the tapping, it explodes amusingly on the unwitting student. Harry crumpled it into a ball and threw it out the window, where Hedwig caught it and flew away. Harry made a noise approximately like GNK. Chapter 95. Draco Isn't Diplomatic. Dear Mr. Potter, I expect a draft of your monograph no later than Friday. I am afraid I spilled wine on your letter. I assume it was nothing of dire import. Cordially, Severus Snape, Professor, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Well, that was a much nicer reply than Harry had been expecting, except a draft of High-Center monograph. By Friday. Professor Snape, Harry thought with considerable cheer, seemed to be feeling fine. Sirius turned up looking windswept and muggle for Harry's 16th birthday party in battered jeans and a leather jacket. He greeted Remus with a bruising hug and ruffled Harry's hair. Dragonhide, Harry, he explained in an aside. Not quite as good as troll hide for blocking spells, but looks a great deal like muggle leather. so just the thing for going around in public. A good deal of the discussion turned to Muggle fashion. After they'd finished the inevitable war talk, which Sirius wanted to know all about. Prime Minister's quite paranoid about the whole thing, he explained, taking a big bite of Harry's birthday cake. With good reason, it seems to me, but it means I don't have much time to keep up with the news on our side of things. Glad Kingsley could cover for me tonight. You don't look very much like a bodyguard, Hermione said doubtfully. Well, I'm a bodyguard going incognito, aren't I? Sirius said. Here, this helps. Sirius put on a large pair of sunglasses, which made him look like nothing so much as a rock star. One of the older ones who'd taken a few too many drugs and had gotten out of rehab and was doing quite well now. Thank you for asking. Arthur Weasley, naturally, wanted to know the purpose of sunglasses. Almost inevitably, this led to Hermione attempting to explain UV light. Harry had another slice of cake and mostly listened. Between his monograph, his friends, trying to figure out how he was going to talk Professor Snape into letting him be Quidditch captain, and poking through Fred and George's more interesting stashes of things, time in the burrow sped by, until it was time to visit Diagon Alley. Hagrid was a welcome sight, but leaving him behind outside, Madame Malkin's was a relief. So Harry, Ron, and Hermione entered the little shop together. It appeared at first glance to be empty, but no sooner had the door swung shut behind them than they heard a familiar voice issuing from behind a rack of dress robes in spangled green and blue. Mother, surely you don't think a shopkeeper is a threat to me, though I am certain you are exquisitely dangerous, Madame Malkin. Ouch, especially with a pin, I see. Draco Malfoy, wearing a handsome set of dark green robes, came around the rack of dress robes to examine himself in a mirror. He met Harry's eye in the mirror, then turned to survey them. Perhaps I could go shopping with my delightful little school friends, he said, very dryly. Granger, who let you out in public. Ron's wand was in his hand. Harry's was out, too, and he wasn't quite sure why. Harry, Ron, don't, said Hermione. Not here. No wands in my shop, please, Madame Malkin said, trying to sound fierce and mostly sounding nervous. Harry eyed her. If you prefer to be expelled, I suppose I can put up with dodging a few spells as a charity, Draco said, looking very bored. Harry didn't buy it for a minute. After all, sixth-year classes actually require some modicum of intelligence, and you've all been hit in the head one too many times, haven't you? Ron still hadn't put away his wand. Harry didn't either, out of support and healthy paranoia. Narcissa Malfoy strolled out from behind the clothes rack. Put those away, she said coldly to Harry and Ron. If you attack my son again, I shall ensure that it is the last thing you ever do. I don't believe you've had the pleasure of meeting my mother, have you? Draco said. Mother Harry Potter, Ronald Weasley, and oh yes, the girl. We met your sister last month, Harry found himself saying. Can't say we got on. Narcissa Malfoy looked at him coolly. My sister is not known for getting on with anyone. Except Voldemort, Harry said, and felt a little guilty when the shopkeeper turned a shade of pale green. Potter, what has got your tail in a twist? I'm busy today, said Draco, and you don't usually terrify the help. Harry thought it entirely possible Madame Malkin did not enjoy being called the help, but he refrained from pointing this out. My uncle and aunt were murdered, Harry said shortly. Put a bit of a damper on my summer, if I'm being honest. Do you know who did it? Who do you think, Malfoy? Draco's expression warmed into the first genuine pleasure Harry had seen on his face all day. Your disgusting muggle's dead. His smile broadened. I hope you're going to write a proper thank you note, Potter. Ron rushed to Harry's defense, while Harry was still trying to think past the ringing in his ears, and Draco and his mother ended up leaving. Harry was trying very hard not to think about it. Dropping by Fred and George's, seeing his candies taking up a discreet shelf near their self-defense things that made everything stop buzzing quite so much. Harry added instant darkness powder and instant distractions to his already absurd cloak pockets of things that might be useful. One day, he'd figure out how to cut down on those. It's not like he could really sort through them without use of summoning charms, right now. Draco Malfoy was threatening people with werewolves and buying dark objects. That was, if expected, not ideal. Harry would have to have a talk with him. "Say, Hermione," Harry said as summer vacation drew to a close, "where would I start on learning a few basic ancient runes?" "With the beginner's textbook, of course, but why?" "Professor Snape and I are working on incorporating runic magic into potion making, a bit. It's all very hush-hush." Harry escaped the ensuing discussion after only 20 minutes. One second-hand copy of a basic ancient runes textbook richer. Chapter 96, Idiot. Figuring out Draco had become something of a group hobby, but they were all equally stumped by his new interest in dark objects. At least until Harry figured out that Draco had taken the dark mark, and silence settled over the three of them like a cloud. "Well, I suppose that's it then," said Ron. "No more second or third or fourth chances to not be a prat. No more thinking he's just pretending." "Maybe he's just." "You don't pretend to take the dark mark," said Ron. "It's not a game." "We're sort of his friends," Harry said. "Let me finish. So I reckon it's our job to knock him down until he realizes he won't be standing up until he stops this. I don't see why we should give him a choice." "You can't make someone be good," Hermione said, rather gently. "I'm not sort of his friend," muttered Ron. "I don't trust him as far as I can throw him. It's Grippi the way he's always turning up all over the place like a ghost." Harry ran his hands through his hair. "Would you rather wait to deal with him until he's learned how to transfigure us all into teaspoons and taught us to dance a jig?" "We'll talk about it later," suggested Hermione. "After all, we'll see him at school soon enough." In another universe, Harry decided Arthur Weasley was his best bet for an adult to warn about Draco Malfoy's suspicious behavior. In this universe, he would have chosen Sirius Black, except Harry could not quite bring himself to distrust Draco so far as to think Draco's errand was truly dangerous. It came to much the same thing in the end. Greg was quite hoping his father would be arrested, Luna confided to Harry in a quiet aside on the train. But no luck so far. Harry nodded sympathetically. Later, Harry discovered that Greg had an ongoing Raxpert problem, but Luna and her father were very hopeful about treatment options. "Petrificus," told Alice. Without warning, Malfoy pointed his wand at Harry, who was instantly paralyzed. As though in slow motion, he toppled out of the luggage rack and fell, with an agonizing, floor-shaking crash, at Malfoy's feet, the invisibility cloak trapped beneath him, his whole body revealed with his legs still curled absurdly into the cramped kneeling position. He couldn't move a muscle. He could only gaze up at Malfoy, who smiled broadly. "Honestly, Harry," Draco said, kneeling next to him and peeling the invisibility cloak off so he could see Harry's face. "I'm sure that was very brave, but it was also entirely stupid. I can't even treasure the picture of you falling out of a luggage rack with you wearing that cloak. Think about others, for a change." Harry glared at him. "You think I didn't learn something the past few years? There's always someone invisible listening, or someone peeking into your mind." A sweep of cool grey eyes, up and down Harry's paralyzed form. "I'm sure you'll be able to derive some sort of moral lesson from this complete and utter failure," Draco said cheerfully. He covered Harry in the invisibility cloak and left. A lantern was bobbing at the distant foot of the castle. Harry was so pleased to see it, he felt he could even endure Filch's wheezy criticisms of his tardiness and rants about how his timekeeping would improve with the regular application of thumbscrews. It was not until the glowing yellow light was 10 feet away from them and had pulled off his invisibility cloak so that he could be seen that he recognized the hooked nose and long, black, greasy hair of Severus Snape. "Well, well, well," sneered Snape, taking out his wand and tapping the padlock once so that the chains snaked backward and the gates creaked open. Nice of you to turn up, Potter, although you have evidently decided that the wearing of school robes would detract from your appearance. Got into a fight with Draco Malfoy, Harry said. Did you? Harry attempted not to look guilty. If Minerva McGonagall is going to be smug about this to me later, I should prefer to know now. He noticed me under the invisibility cloak and got me with Petrificus Totalis. Snape looked nothing so much as amused. There is no need to wait, Nymphadora. Potter is quite safe in my hands. I meant Hagrid to get the message, said Tonks, frowning. Hagrid was late for the start of term feast, just like Potter here, so I took it instead. And you wanted to yell at me about something, Harry interpreted. The day I do not want to yell at you, idiot, is the day I am dead. Tonks, Harry noticed, had a particular expression on her face. Good night, Harry called to her over his shoulder as he began the walk up to the school with Snape. Thanks for everything. See you, Harry. Snape did not speak for a minute or so. 50 points from Gryffindor for lateness, I think, said Snape. And let me see, another 20 for your muggle attire. You know, I don't believe any house has ever been in negative figures this early in the term. We haven't even started pudding. You might have set a record, Potter. You should be happy, then. I have nothing against the house of Gryffindor, Potter. Harry eyed his professor, who seemed just as usual. His hand holding the lantern did not shake, and his face was its usual sunless shade, but not more lined than it had been last spring. I will thank you to stop looking at me as if I were an invalid, Snape snapped. Sorry, sir, Harry said, with as much patent insincerity as he could fit into 2 words. While we are on the subject, what possessed you to be so foolish as to allow yourself to be open to coercion? I am certain I have made myself plain on the subject of attachment. On the subjects Harry really didn't want to discuss with Professor Snape. Wait. You've made yourself plain. Perhaps you are under the impression that I act in this fashion to all my students, Potter, that every student attracts my ire, disgust, and fatigue as if they had drunk a potion of loathing. I have never been kind to you. Wow, that was far too close to discussing emotions for Harry's comfort. Golly. Harry was silent for a while as they walked up towards the castle, trying to kick his tired brain into gear to find an answer that would suit his particular teacher. Or perhaps he should go with an answer that wouldn't suit his teacher. I ignore a lot of what you say, sir, because otherwise I never would have been able to concentrate on learning potions. And that, apparently, was that.